In My Hero Academia chapter 376, All For One finally makes his move and tries to use the chaos to begin flying over to Shigaraki's area. Now it's probably a good thing that Hawks was able to intercept All For One because we have no actual idea what he plans on doing once he gets to Tomura's area, but in this video we're going to discuss exactly that and theorize what All For One actually wants to do when he reaches Shigaraki. So All For One has claimed that he wants Kurogiri's quirk so he could travel around the battlefield easier, but thankfully he isn't able to use his mud teleportation quirk at the distance that he's at currently from UA, so that means the one kind of saving grace for Team Endeavor and for the heroes right now is the fact that All For One can't just so easily hop through the battlefield and go exactly where he needs to go. If they are able to potentially somehow, I don't know how, stop him right now, then everything would kind of leave the range of where All For One seems to have planned, right? Because his plans include him going to Tomura, but if they keep him from going there like Hawks is seemingly trying to, then I wonder how everything would begin to fall apart. Now All For One states that Shigaraki, or that thing, still isn't complete, that there's still something important that he has to do to him to make him complete, and that got the gears kind of turning in my head, because when All For One and Shigaraki approached the heroes, right, they all thought that they were going to be in one location. What would there be left for All For One to do to Shigaraki, like on the battlefield? That seems a little messy to me. But for the sake of theorizing, I think I've come to 3 possible conclusions that I'm comfortable with accepting. Number 1 is he wants to somehow physically fuse with Tomura, giving us an easy way for Tomura to get a final form like most manga villains do. But also it would make sense that All For One himself interfacing with Shigaraki would give him even more control over him and access to Shigaraki's body's amazing power. It might also be though that this fusion would save All For One from rewinding to death like he seems he might, and of course none of us really think that All For One's master plan is him just erasing himself out of existence without him actually being the one in control, right? I don't think he's happy for it to just be Shigaraki's body with his psyche in it. I think All For One wants to be the one who decides which side the napkin falls. Option number 2 is that I think All For One wants to give his quirk to Tomura because maybe there was more than one reason for All For One to copy his own quirk and split them up. Perhaps Shigaraki or Tenko can't be properly controlled until both All For One quirk vestiges work together, or perhaps something exciting will happen when Shigaraki receives the other All For One. And this is a very weird instance because I don't know if you've ever seen a person with the original version of a quirk and the copy of that quirk in their body at the same time. I just don't really know how that would work, or if the 2 vestiges would work together or make it double stronger. Like, how would that really work out, especially considering the 2 different All For One variants have completely different loadouts, or at least pretty different loadouts with maybe a couple shared abilities between them. And lastly, I'm not going to discount the thought that there might be a quirk that All For One has that he has to actually use on Shigaraki to complete his transformation, and if he doesn't, Shigaraki is going to morph into a grotesque monstrous being like in Akira, which would track since the last time we saw Shigaraki he was swelling up like a balloon and we've already seen him spawning a bunch of warped and twisted flesh. I think this would work because All For One does tend to solve all of its problems using quirks, but also Shigaraki does have a lot of parallels to Tetsuo and just Akira in general. Regardless, All For One wants to reach Shigaraki, and I don't know if Hawks is going to be able to stop him from getting there, but let's say All For One somehow does make it to Deku's area. This would give All For one final chance to leave an impression in Deku's head, or to try to mentally break him somehow to distract him from the fight. He could also just flat out help Tomura in the battle, giving Deku 2 All For One holders to fight at once, and most importantly, his arrival would mean that someone else has to step in to help Deku, because we know soon Deku is going to reach the limit of the Gear Shift quirk's timeout, so without being able to end things quickly, it would become a very tough situation. Now I've been saying for a while that I do think Bakugo is eventually going to get up and continue his quirk awakening, but I thought maybe that's what they would need to fight just Shigaraki. How much would they need to fight Shigaraki and All For One? Lastly, I do believe All Might is in UA along with Nezu and the others in a sort of battle station. Could we actually see All Might coming out to try to help Deku, and could All Might mimic Deku in the first chapter by running quirklessly to his student's aid? Nine Eye did predict that All Might would die, so could that finally happen here, or will Deku change the future, and if so, how? Or because of the fact that All For One is the one permanently being rewinded this time, will things go his way instead? The worst case scenario for All For One is that Deku saves Shigaraki or Tenko before All For One is able to get to UA, leading to a situation where Tenko and Deku fight to take down the Demon King. In that sort of situation, how do you think things would play out? This all makes me really interested in just what All For One is planning, because we've seen him starting to move and finally starting to act, but it's always hard to tell what's going on with that guy, because every time something happens to him, he just goes, yes, everything's going according to plan. That's all you hear about with All For One, right? It's plan after plan after plan after plan, but what is the plan here in this situation? But I suppose it's not all that stressful for All For One to have to come up with a plan, because the heroes are kind of taking the L right now. I mean, Hawks is not in a position to keep fighting All For One. He might be out of here. Dobby versus Endeavor is happening right now. Both of them might be out of here. Shoto's already gassed out. Genus is already gassed out. I mean, a lot of the heavy hitters in this arc are already out of here, so it's really going to depend on how things unfold from the hero side, and if they have any more aces up their sleeve or something somehow that they have hidden. I think the best case scenario for the heroes and the worst case scenario for All For One would be if those countries that have all been holding back support for Japan in this key moment actually start coming in and flooding in with their help, with some of the top heroes from everywhere coming in to help Japan in their hour of need. Regardless whether or not this happens, I do expect the heroes to win at the end of the day, so we're just gonna have to see how All For One is gonna fumble this master plan that he has so beautifully that it's gonna make us all just wonder, wow, why do we ever take that guy seriously?